Welcome to the Mom Founders Table. Pull up a chair and join me every week as I become your thought partner and help you lead to create change. I'm your host, Kelsey Kenry, entrepreneur, millionaire mom of three, and strategic business coach for established mom entrepreneurs. Every week, you will get tactical guidance to apply to your business, leadership, and life that will help you further your true success while also being invited into a new way of thinking and being that creates true freedom. I'm here to call you out and call you up, so take a seat and let's begin. Welcome back to another episode of the Mom Founders Table. Today, I have another incredible woman that we are interviewing, and this is a special interview because Leah has been a client. She is a sister of a client. She has been in my program. She has helped me. We have chatted back and forth. I'm obsessed with her and her children and just like always watching her Instagram stories. So I suggest you do the same. But she is just the most organized, structured, amazing human. And so I'm so excited to just dig in and let her teach us so much goodness today for all of us that are just operating and scattered and all over the place. So with that, Leah, tell us a little bit about you and where you're from and what you do.
Hi, so my name is Leah Rosser. I am from, I say Georgia at this point. I'm technically from the Atlanta area, but we have recently moved to North Georgia, so no longer really Atlanta. And I am a fractional COO. And so I support business owners with their back-end work, their systems, but I also really specialize in the people ops side of things. So not just the systems, but actually getting to know your people, getting into your systems, understanding how it works and it flows. And really, my background doesn't come from what you would assume would be like a traditional background getting into ops. I was an educator and I taught elementary school for 7-8 years, and I loved it. It was amazing. But it wasn't the best fit for me after a while once I started having kids, and really came into this work through my sister, who I was able to work for and support her with her business. And that really got me started into the work that I do now and really supporting other clients. And it's really just grown from there. And it has been such an amazing journey transitioning into this role and this work. And it's very similar to teaching, just with adults in its own right, for sure.
We are just like older children. Trying to keep like a business owner in line is the same thing as like herding our toddlers. It is the same. We're crazy.
It's very similar. It's very similar. Different. The conversation can look a lot different. I can actually say some of the things that are on my mind more than when I was working with kids. So for sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think first and foremost, just like special shout out to Sharice. I hope she listens to this episode, but like she's a phenomenal human. This is Leah's sister who I first worked with before Leah and I worked together. And just, I got to be like, as Sharice's coach, I got to see a lot of the work that like Leah was doing behind the scenes. And so I knew, like, I remember telling Sharice so many times, I'm like, she is magical. Like what she is doing is so next level. So I think it's so cool that you were able to get that opportunity, like with your sister, and even in navigating that relationship, right? Because I think a lot of times, like when you work with family or friends, like that can be really difficult. But I actually think you guys are a great example, probably because you communicate so clearly and so well. So I just wanted to say, hi, Sharice. We love you.
Yes.
And I think the cool thing about, what you do is like with the structure that you provide people, and just a lot of people, when they think about like a COO or somebody who is, focused on like creating structure within the business, they don't necessarily think about what can come from that. And I think that like what people don't realize is like, we have the same clientele, which is obviously why I've sent you clients many times.
For sure.
And like the result of like the peace of mind that it creates. So tell me a little bit more about like, who do you work with and like, what are they struggling with and when do they know that they need you?
So it's so interesting that you said that. This is something that's like come to me in the last couple of weeks as like a revelation, is that systems and organization really is almost an act of love and care and respect for someone. And that really like is a through line through the work I do with a bunch of my clients. So starting with Sharice, and where I find a lot of my founders is they are often in a place where what they've been doing no longer works for them. Maybe their systems no longer work for them or their people. It could be two different kind of pages that they're on there, but they feel like, okay, something's not working and I'm at a breaking point and I need some sort of support. So when Sharice reached out to me in particular, she was at a breaking point. She was at her capacity. She felt overwhelmed and she didn't know what help specifically she needed. She just knew she needed someone she could trust, someone who respected her and who would love and care for her. And so it was interesting because that was how that relationship was forged with my sister. But it's really been a similar approach with all of my clients. So I find that when they are in that place of where do I go from here? I have all these systems in place. Maybe my business has been thriving for over 20 years, but what we've been doing for 20 years no longer works. Or I've been doing this for 5 years and it no longer works. Or maybe you have a team member who's worked with you for years and because of your loyalty, commitment to them, you can't find it in your heart to let them go, to step away and say, this no longer serves me. And I come in to really support and say, hey, two things can be true. You can really care about the employee that you have or the team member that you have, and you can still say, this no longer serves my business and where we're going. And we're going to have to make a shift in our team. Or this system, and when a lot of people think about systems, they typically lean to automations, but it's so much more than that. It's how you
Yeah.
communicate internally. Like it's your internal infrastructure. It's how you're emailing back and forth with your team. How frequently are you meeting? So it's so much deeper than just, does my Zapier backend like make sense? Or am I using Notion or what your tech stack is? It's deeper than that. It's how does everything in your ecosystem of your business work together and flow? And so I found that a lot of my founders are really at that point of, I don't know what else to do to make this shift. And when I step in, I'm able to help support them by building that trust and showing that love and that care and that relationship, because that's paramount for me. For if I'm working with anyone, the relationship is 100% foundational in order for you to trust that what I'm telling you is going to make a difference long term.
Yeah, because you're helping them make so many decisions. And I think it's really cool, again, because I do have the experience with you of like having clients that have you in their business. And I think, like, if you're somebody listening right now, I think it's important that, like, the ideal scenario, like, not to toot my own horn, but like the ideal scenario is like you have both of us, right? You have
Mhm.
somebody who is helping
Yeah,
you go through your thoughts to diagnose, like, this is actually what's happening, to help advise on, like, here's the direction, to
for
help you
sure.
strategize, to help you work through all of the leadership and the fires and stuff like that. And then you have somebody that can support you in the implementation. And I
For sure.
think that, like, those
Sure.
bookends for people are really like the difference in people who will thrive long term, because typically, like, people will have one or the other. And I'll see sometimes, like, I'll tell people to hire me all day, but at the same sense, I'll see people sometimes like lean towards, they'll go hire a business coach for something that they should be hiring a COO for. And
Hmm.
so I would love to hear you kind of speak to, like, when would somebody know, right? So they're running their business, they're established, they have some things that are working, they're recognizing, okay, this is falling apart a little bit. Like, things are not working like they used to. It's maybe kind of drowning me. Like, what would they be dealing with right now that would signal, like, it's time to bring in a fractional COO?
I definitely say it would be a lot of times it could be something around maybe you need to take time out of office and you are trying to figure out how to sort through what is this going to look like for me to take time out of office. Or maybe you do actually take a day off and things fall apart. You're getting pings
Mm.
constantly and or you're having to say, hey, I have to completely remove my calendar or my email from my phone and my Slack from my phone when I'm on vacation because no one can touch me because you've gotten that uncomfortable in having to oversee in that way. Like you feel like your overwhelm is rooted so deeply in, I have to manage every single task that's happening. Typically, it's a lot of micromanaging. You feel like you're having to circle back. Hey, where was this? Where did this land? I missed this. I don't understand. When you completed this task, what's happening? I definitely see that around systems. It also could be that you are having a lot of client churn or you're starting to see churn if you're a service-based organization because either you are at capacity or your team is not following the model of efficacy that you've put in place of what is your business foundation. And so I've seen that frequently. And every now and then it might be something where your revenue streams maybe are being a little bit impacted by what's happening, or you're saying, okay, my team is at capacity. This is when I hear a lot. My team is at capacity, but nothing's moving. Like everyone's looking at me and saying, I don't have capacity. I can't take this on. Nothing's moving. And I was telling actually a client earlier today, we were talking about, it was a client's direct report and the person who reports to them. And we were trying to figure out, okay, what are they actually doing? And she was saying, yeah, I think she just moves slow. And the key isn't always that they're necessarily moving slow. Sometimes the capacity gap is literally in the amount of decision fatigue because they are trying to figure out what is expected of me, what's unclear. Do I understand this process? Am I doing the process right? And so you may have a team member who really is working hard, but they're not effective in the work that they're doing because they don't have the parameters of clear expectations, what to do, those clear boundaries in place to know how to be successful in their role. And so it feels like they're working a 40-hour work week when really their output is 10 hours. And you as the business owner are trying to figure out, oh my gosh, I need 40 hours of support from you though. And so typically those are some of the areas that I see clients are really struggling with, or the points where I come in and I'm able to really assess the situation and take a step back and say, oh, we need to make this shift immediately to really give you that capacity and that piece back.
And I think that's what it comes down to is like being able to have peace of mind, right? Because we're so afraid to let go. We're so controlling. And like, I don't think that any of us as business owners are like, you know what? I want to control every detail. I don't think we like say that to ourselves, but like our actions show that because we're so afraid. And so I'm interested to hear from you, like when you're in the back end of these businesses, what are some of the things that you have seen that have been like the most impactful for founders to be able to feel kind of that piece of mind?
I think oversight, clear line of oversight is a huge thing. And that sounds very lofty, but as simple as, do I see what's happening in my business? Am I able to see where things are moving, the status of a lot of things? So oftentimes it's as simple as putting in a project management system. And oftentimes it's so interesting because most people think, okay, I have to go with this specific system. Or you may have a founder who's tried 4 different project management systems that don't work. And it's oftentimes not the system. Really, there are so many platforms out here. There are so many platforms out here that all do the same exact thing at this point in life. And so oftentimes it's not the system itself, it's how you're leveraging it. Is it set up in a way that makes sense for you? There is a recent situation, we've been updating a system and it needed to be streamlined in a way that the team could really understand it, but it didn't give the founder her level of oversight. But it worked really well for the team's understanding of the broken down workflow. So rather than transitioning things all together for everyone, we created a process that would allow that CEO to have the oversight they needed, like to see everything in the way that made sense for them. So oftentimes it's that type of pivot, putting in a project management system, or one of the biggest areas that I've seen as a flag is like communication. So how are you communicating?
Should we start a new episode? I feel like this is a whole episode.
On Slack?
God, can we stop using Slack as a project management system? Like, I get it because I still 100% transparency. I will still do it. I'll have a thought and I'll fire it off and then I'll be like, oh, fuck, I wasn't supposed to do that. Like, I get it. I get it. But like,
it's so easy to do it that way, but it just is not for everyone. Yes.
Right.
It can, Slack teams, because I don't discriminate against teams, though it's not my favorite. I do have clients who leverage teams too. And when you rely too much on those systems and then you wonder why you can't figure out where things landed. Why wasn't this loop closed? Well, it lived in a message in a thread where we ended up talking about something we started talking about somebody's birthday or doing something completely different. And we completely lost that this needed to end up as a task or this needed to end up as a next step. And so there's so many platforms that do so many of the same things. You have to find what really works for you and your business. I recently myself brought someone on my team to help kind of support me administratively. And at where we are with it being the two of us, we leverage Slack, but then we leverage my motion calendar for all task management, including for her. Because even when it's just the two of us, it has to be clear. She has to have clear understanding of what's expected, of what's needed. And so I definitely think that communication piece is I can't say it. I can't say it enough. Because as CEOs, you want to brain dump things. I started implementing for a couple of my clients like a brain dump section in Slack where it's like the
Yeah.
canvas and like drop all your notes there. Like
Yeah.
all the things that you're thinking about at 3 a.m. I'm not saying don't put them somewhere, but don't put them in a message that then pings your team, that then makes your team have this, no, I got a Slack message at 3 a.m. And then they move completely differently. And you create kind of a retention issue. Put it in a brain dump, tag them in it. They can look at it later on. We can talk about it, or it can become our agenda next week and we can really ideate instead of trying to ideate in Slack. That is like one of
Mm.
the biggest solutions I've started putting in place recently because it's meeting the CEO where they are and meeting the team where they are. Like the CEO needs to get out of their head, but the team also needs to receive it in a way that's effective for them.
Yeah, because otherwise, I feel like what's interesting is that from my perspective, like when I'm advising business owners, I think about like time being our greatest asset, right? Like you cannot get back your time. And so if we are wasting time because we're chasing,
For
because we
sure.
don't know where things are, because things are disorganized, because we don't trust our team, like
Yeah,
whatever, like this kind of stuff is such a time suck and an energy suck. And so I think that's the other piece of this, that people sometimes are just so short sighted in like, oh, let me just put this here because it's quickest, not thinking, like you said, about the ripple effect of like how that's going to affect people on the team or how that's going to be received. So I love that reminder, even for myself, of just like, consider that. Like before you fire
hmm,
something off, like take a second and like think, where does this actually go? Like,
for sure.
and I
For
think
sure.
that's what I'm hearing from you is like a
For
lot
sure.
of the situations can be alleviated by having dedicated spaces for certain things, right?
Definitely. Dedicated spaces, clear processes for certain things. And it doesn't mean you have to have 1,000 different like SOPs or structures or processes, but it means you need to have if I'm a team member and I'm not understanding where something is, I can go to a resource and find it. Or if
Mhm.
I'm new to the team, I can get a general idea. I'm still going to need, that 30, 60, 90-day time frame to acclimate to what's happening, but I can have an idea generally um, of what's needed. And you made such a good point because it's even sometimes beyond business in that sense. But like one of the things, like I was saying, I root myself in is really that structure. Organization is a truly an act of love. I joke all the time. My husband, when we first met, we were dating for 2 months. And in that 2 months, he came over to my apartment. He saw my pantry and it was horrendous, horrendous. It was so bad. And I have literal like 20 minutes worth of video of him cleaning out my pantry, fussing at me about it in like a very joking, loving manner. And at first I was like laughing in the videos, but I was kind of, I know he did not just do that. Like we are 2 months into dating. You do not
Yeah.
know me. And sometimes that's how I can feel for my clients. Like you have come into my business for 2 months, 3 months, and you were telling me all this stuff I need to change. That can be jarring, but it is an act of love because what it's
Mhm.
doing is setting you up for long-term success, right? And building that trust that I'm not just getting in here just to, have a client, make money, doing it. I'm getting into this work because I genuinely care about seeing the success of your business long term and your mental health being successful long term. So it's very interesting because that started such a layer of trust for me and my husband at a very young age that now I know where he's coming from when he is providing that level of like constructive support and, hey, can we change
Mm.
this? Can we grow this? And it's the same in business. Like when I step in, I'm coming to help you long term. I'm coming to support you long term and make sure that your business thrives long term.
And I think the intention behind everything matters, right? Like that's one of my biggest values, right? Is depth of care. And
Yeah.
like that's what you're saying
Yeah.
too, is like everything is rooted in that. And I think that really when you really do care about somebody, I was having a conversation with a client this morning, and she had to give some feedback to a team member, and she kind of avoided the hard part of the conversation where she brought it to like, okay, so here's what the expectations are and this is what I need from you, because she was afraid that person was going to get defensive. And what I told her is like, honesty is kindness, right? Like
For
when
sure.
you're honest with somebody, when you're coming from and moving from a place of like, hey, your business is a dumpster fire right now, but like if we change these things, we can fix it. Like, and I think that's the thing that like when I'm hearing you talk through, like, yes, I'm going to come in and I'm going to clean out your pantry, but like I'm going to do it like holding your hand. I'm going to do it from a place of
Yeah.
love. And I think people need that because we're so afraid of like people seeing what is behind the scenes, you know, especially I think
For
it
sure.
gets like almost worse the more established you get, because you're like, oh, I've been doing this way for like 10 years or whatever. And there's a lot of shame around that. So how do you help when you're working with people and you see this in the back end, you're like, okay, how do you help walk them through like that fear of change that really comes up like as you're implementing new things?
So I've started to try to, originally, it was like a learning curve for me of how I really hold someone's hand through that. Like I said,
Mm.
initially, my support was with my sister. And, we have done great work, but there are some nuances to working with your
Of course.
your older
Yeah.
sister and like some dynamics. And so as I was growing with different clients that I worked with and building that rapport, one of the ways that I found to be the easiest is rooting all of my information, feedback, and things in quantitative, like very clear, data driven responses. So I found that doing audits of a lot of my clients back end allows for it to feel less personal and more prescriptive. This is what
Mm.
I'm seeing. This is what's happening. And then it allows me to guide them through. These are action steps. These are prescriptive action steps, but here's how I'm going to help you get there. Here's how we're going to measure these benchmarks along the way. And that's been really helpful to ensure that I can separate the things that we need to fix from the relationship that I will have with my client as I'm guiding them through some of those things. So this morning in particular, I had a pretty challenging conversation. What I anticipated would be a challenging conversation with a client about some next steps that we needed to have around personnel. We needed to
Mm.
transition some personnel from the team. I was a little hesitant to have that conversation. And it took me putting things into the agenda that were like very clearly prescriptive. Here's what we're seeing. Here's what's been happening. Here's the financial impacts. What is the best decision and path forward? And we were able to leave that call, extremely positive call, extremely effective, on the same page and make the necessary decisions. So I definitely would say that prescriptive component of giving a clear, here's what I'm seeing, here's the order of operations of what needs to happen, and then here are the solutions I'm going to help walk you through is paramount and so huge. And it makes people feel like they can always go back to the numbers without feeling like there's an emotional attack on them, which is never the goal, or like, an attack on the business. It's a clear, here's the problem, here's how we solve it. Let's address it in this manner.
I love that. And I think there is like I think that's such a beautiful way to kind of separate the emotions. And that's like, I always say like data is not emotional. Like we can't, you've probably heard me say that at some point where I'm just like, you can't like argue about it. It's just literally just right there in front of you. And so I think anytime we can pull
Yes.
data into our communication and present that, because I think, when as business owners, like we're running our business and like we're thinking about like growth and like our clientele and customer service and things like that. And we forget that like the back end is what drives all that. And so I think that's why like some of this stuff gets neglected for like way longer than it should
Mhm.
have, because we're not connecting those dots of like how important it really is to have the right, like the clarity for our team, the success metrics, the KPIs, the SOPs, like the
Yes.
right platforms, all of those things. Like those are the things that actually lighten your load. And one of the things that you had mentioned was that you can help them to identify one thing operationally that lightens that mental load for them. So can you tell me about like that framework that you use to diagnose that?
For sure. So I do, some of this goes back to my teaching structure of, okay, how do we really get into this? So I do an order of operations audit to really go into what do your systems look like? what systems do you have in place? What's your tech stack? Because it's interesting. I originally used to do a form, and it's sometimes hard to retrieve all of the different systems that you use. So I would have clients who would fill out the form, but it's sometimes because you may use Slack for this, and then, oh, I use PandaDoc for this. Oh, but I use Google Calendar. And it's like a never ending labyrinth. Like you can't even tell how many subscriptions you sign up for. And
Yeah.
most of the time, I tell it's like we can cut at least $400-500 a month if we just
Yeah.
consolidate.
Yeah.
And so I will do that audit to really look through their systems, what SOPs they have. Oftentimes they will have some of those bones in place. And I see this most with my service based clients because they start plowing through, like their business grows, they're getting all this revenue, they start plowing through the work and they're just like, okay, I need help here. So I'm gonna hire a contractor. I need help here. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that. And they just keep going. And then it's like, okay, yeah, I had a discovery call about Motion or one of these platforms. Cool. I'm gonna add that to my tech stack. And then like they just keep going. And they never take the time because it takes time. Does the system really work for you? Does it make sense for you long term? And does it fit? For over 2 years, I tried to convince my sister to transition to Motion as her calendar, which is what I leverage. And it took literally 2 years. And we finally made it happen in the last 2 weeks. And she came back to me the other day and she was like, this is what you were talking about. It feels less rigid. My calendar was, I mean, she would have work blocks galore and then like tasks like under each work block. And she said, we were waiting on something from a client for a review and it just moved it down to in my day to like later in the day. And I said, yeah, like that's what I've been wanting for you because, and she said, I used to have the mindset that if it didn't happen in my 2:00 work block, it was a problem. And I was like, no, we have to fix that. So I come in, do that order of operations audit, look at those systems that you have in place, and they may have been serving you well for a while and really provide suggestions around that. And then I look at your people because I always say people and systems work together hand in hand. They're the ones using it. You can assume that your team, in some ways, it can be like your team is the problem or your team is fantastic and you don't see where the problems lie, but people and systems work hand in hand. If your people don't know what they're supposed to do, they don't have clear expectations, then that's key. So I take about 4 to 6 weeks to really dig into that audit. And then going forward, the goal is that we would have a solution strategy session in person where we can meet and we can talk about what those solutions are. What do you need? What does that feel like for you? Based off of what I found in this audit, here's what we're actually going to do. Like, this is the diagnosis, but here's what we're actually going to do. And then I implement from there and continue to support you and your team, which I found to be the best approach and strategy to really making sure my clients feel fully supported and know exactly what's happening from beginning to end and what we're working on.
Yeah, because we can have the best of intentions, I feel like, to where it's like, thank you for letting me know. Like, I need this stuff. I'm going to go put it in place. And then it's like 6 months later and they're like, yeah, I didn't do that. It's like, you should have just hired Leah and let her do it. Like, just let her do the thing. That's why I'm always like, I always tell people, I'm like, you're just wasting time and energy and like, just let me fix it. Like, just hire me and let me fix it. And then we can get past this and keep like, come on, let's go.
Because it's so much more work and so much more effort on your end when you can just delegate that work to someone. And sometimes that third party person who I'm not in your day to day all the time. I do get in your day to day as I'm working with you, but I'm not in your
Yeah.
day to day initially. So I can see things that you can't.
Preach.
And I tend to have a
Yeah.
pretty good like sixth sense about people and and
You
different
are
things
really
happening.
good at that. You are.
So yeah.
Okay. So give me like an example here of like if a founder comes to you and they're super overwhelmed, they're like all over the place, they're doing all the things that we've talked about here. What is the first operational change that you would make for them that would create like instant relief or like pretty quick relief for them?
It's for sure. I would say it's like twofold because typically I will look at their calendar and how I can delegate things off of their calendar. And then that
Yeah.
turns into the project management system. The
Mm.
project management system lets us identify like tasks that they need done. And so before I implement a system, I always do a who does what and like out identifying like key responsibilities across the team. because sometimes there are things happening that even a CEO doesn't always know, like what nuances go into workflows. And then from there, I would typically do SOP. So, like, those would be my top three in terms of major next steps. Like, what's on your calendar? What can we free up and delegate? Once we've done that, let's make sure we have a clear understanding of the life cycle of tasks that you have and the workflow that you have and everything that you need to get done. And then who is doing that? And then from there, making sure they have a clear understanding of the appropriate way to do what you're asking for them to do so that it meets those needs fully. But the calendar is number one, just because I want you to have that capacity. I want you to I want to make sure that you feel comfortable, you feel like you have room to breathe, and we focus in on you first, just because it's the foundation of the business. If you're not in your best mindset, frame of mind, understanding, you can't ideate and grow the business. The business isn't going to scale how you want it to. It's going to, stop where it is because you need those days to just breathe and think, okay, I want to think of new content, or I want to think of a new revenue stream that we haven't thought about. And when you have those moments, it makes such a big difference. So I always love freeing that up. And that's why so many of my things are like intentionally structured and named in that way. Even the order of operations audit, the goal of it is to help you get out of office. Like, is my goal. Like, how
Mm.
can I help you identify the things to get you out of office, whether it's for a vacation or on a weekly basis? Like, that is a goal of mine for sure.
Yeah, and I love that. Obviously, there's just so much like synergy and like our beliefs and what we think is important. And I agree so much that
Yeah.
like people underestimate the importance of just like the time where you're not in your business and how truly lucrative it is for long-term success. And so it's interesting because in that first part, obviously, you're going through time and you're looking at their calendar and you're recognizing, like, hey, these are things that we need to get delegated out. And so, my question to you is like, there are women who delegate and there are women who delegate and then micromanage. And so, I would hear from
Mhm.
you, what is the way that we should be delegating to where it actually reduces our workload and our mental load?
So, yes, I love that because micromanagement is a huge part of the people ops that makes it a big difference. The way in which you should delegate, it should feel like you have thought through this process and you know what it should look like. So the best way I think about it is it should be a repeatable process. Typically, CEOs try to just brain dump everything that they think about. Okay, we do this, we do this, we do this, we do this, and then we do this on this day and then this on this day. But I've done it like this, and sometimes I go in this way, and it's great. You can explain that,
Like all of
but
us
is it
listening right now, like hiding, like, oh my God, you're calling me out.
and trust me, I know, because even when I was onboarding, like, my team member, I was like, "Oh, yeah, let me re-record that name and hear," because I was like, "Leah, that didn't make sense. You didn't answer all the questions." And so you have to really think through what that looks like and how it can be repeatable. The best way I always tell people is imagine if you literally weren't able to be here. Like, you weren't able to, maybe you fell ill or something happened. How can someone pick up and do it like you? And so,
Mm,
one, you have to also manage your expectations. If you are delegating something to a team member, unless you have from top to bottom told them exactly what you want it to look like from the beginning to the end, and maybe even giving them a template of like, this is how it should look, it's not very, very rarely will it come out looking how you want it to. It's kind of like
mm.
the like recipe thing, right? Unless you follow the recipe to the T, you have done it with these same measurements of paprika and salt and pepper and garlic and all the things. It's not gonna it's not gonna happen that way. So it has to be repeatable. It has to be clearly defined what the expectations are, because then you're setting your team up for success. And you have to give them not just the resource to make it clear of what they're expected to do. You give them the clear parameters, you give them a clear deadline, and then you allow them to do their best work. If there are pieces that are missing, they're going to miss the deadline. If there are pieces, and they're oftentimes not going to ask a question because they're going to be sitting in the back end. Okay, I want to please, I want to do right, especially if I'm a new hire or I've been working with them for a long time. I'm going to try to figure it out as best as I can. Well, there's a
Mm.
couple of barriers. Depending on what systems you use, you're going to have two-factor authentication barriers anytime. There is a, a like meme the other day that came up, and it was saying, when you get the email like, hey, where are we at with this? And it's like the day that it's due and you totally forgot about it. And it's like, oh, that's what we were supposed to do. The reason for that is because they don't always have what they need and they're afraid to ask. So they'll try to like plow through. Let me get authentication access. Okay. And then you can't get access to a different document, or you can't do the things that you need to do. Or maybe I need this person's contact information, but I don't have it, but I'm hesitant to ask. So let me just do a quick Google search. And that's where the capacity problems come in, because a task that could have taken them 30 minutes is now taking them an hour and a half every single time. And then that's when you feel like you have to micromanage. Well, what are you doing? Why is it taking you so long to do that task? Why is it taking you so long to move the needle forward? Why didn't I have this by the deadline? Why didn't you just ask me questions? But we don't set them up for success on the front end and then get frustrated when that need isn't met. And that's when I realize micromanaging comes into play. And the way to curtail that is to have clear, repeatable processes and steps. And it doesn't mean you won't have nuances to your business, but it just means that if there are those nuances, you as the visionary are leading that charge, explaining to your team what you're looking for, giving them that empowerment to say, hey, I know this is a new process. Let's ideate, let's work through it, let's make a plan, but not expecting them to take what you've thought about since 3 a.m. 2 weeks ago. Like you've been like, oh, I had this new idea, and you've been thinking on it and ruminating on it and planning it and ideating, and then expecting them to execute to the level at which you thought about it, though they've never actually seen the plan. You're the visionary. You are the architect who dreams up what this house should look like. Where I come in as the COO, I take that picture of the beautiful mansion that you've drawn and I put actual measurements in place of like, okay, this needs to go here. This room actually can't fit here. We need to move this room here. And I logistically make it happen. And then your team can actually successfully build because they have everything that they need from there. So I help to kind of make that integration, like middle ground, flow a lot better.
Yeah. And that's the part that I think a lot of people are missing in their business, is the flow between. And like I always tell people, I'm like, when you delegate, make sure you give the who, what, where, when, why. Like cover all your bases up front, because like you said, there's so much time lost and then you're frustrated. And then like I have a client who was like getting frustrated about like, she wants to kind of fire off stuff and just say like, do this thing, but not give all the information because she's in between stuff, and then is frustrated that it's not executed the way. And I'm like, I know that you don't want to hear me say to just like slow down for like, if you give an additional 30 seconds, 1 minute to record a loom that talks through, this is the color, this is the address, this is the phone number, this is the like the details. And that's where I think it's so important that like we can come back to what we can control, right? Which is our communication, which is the clarity that we give on the front end. And if we give more clarity on the front end, it cleans up everything down the line. So I appreciate that like reminder for sure.
Yeah. And the communication is so key. I can use my sister because like she knows I can poke at her around like all of the things. This happens a lot with a lot of my clients. You think you've said it, and we joke about it, even like me and my mom sometimes. She thinks that she's told us something that we've never heard before.
Yeah.
Because she had the conversation in her head. And I do it all the time too. Like my husband claims I do it all the time too, of like, you did not tell me that. I'm like, I did. But we as women, especially moms, oh my gosh, the amount of times we have as we're like driving to pick up or, you know, sitting in the Dunkin' line, like we're having 15 conversations. Okay, I need to do the doctor's appointment. I need to do this. Okay, I think I told Fred about this. And you're like literally having the conversation in your head. And at that moment, you're like, I've told that person. Yeah. And so then you like circle back, like, what happened here? And it's like, with what item? Yeah. And so it is so true. Like the importance of the who, what, when, where. And it forces you, it takes a beat for you to have to do it and put it on your calendar and make it happen to like add the task or do something with the next steps. But it's going to make sure it's done closer to right than you want it. Like it's going to be as close to final as you can possibly get it because you've taken that time on the front end to do that, which is why I start with the calendar as well,
Mhm.
right? There's a recent situation, a client, we needed some items that like needed to be reviewed. And we have a process in place where we ping the reviewer, it goes to them, but it was different people were setting reviews for different days. And there were other things that she had planned on her calendar that we don't know about. And it's not their fault. Like they just did what the process was. And
Yeah.
then it came down to, hey, why don't we put a new parameter in place and you pick 2 days that you're going to review and that's your non negotiable? When do you want to review? What 2 days feel good on your calendar for you to review items? And then if people can't meet the first deadline, then they need to communicate that. And if the deadline needs to change, but you set that boundary. And boundaries, I always tell my CEOs, anyone, boundaries are for you. They're not for the other person. So like, put your boundary in place. If you want
Mm.
to only review on those 2 days, that's your non-negotiable and everyone else will conform to it and we'll address it. But it needs to be clearly defined so that you aren't having to, okay, I'm doing it this time, I'm doing this time. No, what days are we reviewing? And that's going to be the non-negotiable. And so definitely making sure those things happen and move in that way.
Yeah, and I love that because like boundaries as a whole are like we're so afraid to set them because we don't want to let anybody down and we always want to be available and what if somebody needs me, but that's the same thing that's keeping us on all the time,
Mhm.
which goes
All the
back to
time.
like if we actually learn how to delegate correctly and empower our teams, like we can bless and release, which is what we want. That's why we hire people, right? Like to be able to say, "Okay, like I'm no longer doing this." Like that's
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
point. And so I think just, remembering and going back to the bigger picture of like if you've grown a team and you're running this business, like your goal should be to be in your zone of genius. So what is pulling you away from that? Why are you stuck in those
Yeah,
things
for
and
sure.
how are you contributing to that cycle or that problem? So here's a question for you.
Yeah.
How can I, if I'm a CEO who's extremely busy and I, know that I'm kind of like firing these things off, what are the top maybe 3 biggest mistakes that you're seeing that busy women are making in their businesses? And then what are the easiest ways that they could shift something small for a big impact?
I love that. So, top 3 things I would say. One would be hiring fast and cheap. I'm just going to be straightforward. We try to get a volume of people and we don't hire intentionally. So, I would definitely
Mhm.
say that's, and I would say cheap sometimes, and not that you have to spend a lot of money, but sometimes you just need one position that you pay a little bit more for rather than 2 positions and you're getting half-ass work essentially most of the time. And so I would say hiring too quickly and hiring, inefficiently in terms of that support. And then I would say definitely just kind of throwing all the systems to the wind. So just endorsing any system. And oftentimes the third would be moving too fast. I feel like we don't take a beat to assess where we are. And I'll give you a nod here, Kelsey, because you even told me this. Business can be moving, things can be growing. You can be like growing with your clients, increasing revenue streams, and you're just like, ooh, ooh, ooh. And we don't take, especially as women, especially as mothers, a beat to assess where we are and implement that biweekly planning day or making sure we have time on our calendar for CEO time. Like we don't take that beat because we're like, okay, I can get another client in. Let me add in another Friday call. Okay, I'm not gonna take Fridays off anymore. I'm not gonna focus on content anymore. I'm not gonna do this anymore. And so I would say that those are the top 3 things that I see that's like where CEOs are really having a hard time and like missing the mark right now is that they're hiring too many people and they get frustrated with the team that they have and all of that. They buy every system in the wind and they don't put clear processes in place to make them flow. And then for sure that they are not taking a beat to slow down and assess their situation and what they currently have, which is often sometimes hard to do when you are the visionary of an organization, which is why it's helpful to have an integrator who comes in like me, who forces that. Whoa,
Yeah,
whoa,
so
whoa.
true.
I love that you want to do something on Mars. I was joking, like, I love that you want to like teach or you want to have a master class on Mars. Like, that's beautiful. We can make that happen. Not this quarter. What we can make happen this quarter is I can start planning the you have someone who loves and takes that vision and owns it and then helps you make it a reality. And that is a huge game changer for a lot of them.
Yeah, and it's interesting because as I was listening to you talk through these three things, like the word that kept like pinging in my head was like there's avoidance. Like we're looking at the
Mm-hmm.
wrong things. Like instead of peeling back the layers and being like, okay, I actually
Yeah,
need to step back and like assess and like fix some of these foundational pieces that are not serving me. It's like, ooh, there's so much fear around what will happen if I slow down. But I'm like,
for sure.
that's exactly how that's how we go further, and that's how we go longer. So what are three simple things that would tie into these areas that she could implement, whether it's a conversation or whatever it is? What are three simple things that you would say, okay, do these three things right now and this will help you to breathe?
I would say the first thing is getting really clear on your boundaries, your calendar, what your schedule is going to look like. What are you willing to do for your business? Also, getting super clear on what seat do you want to have? Like, how far do you want this business to go? Correct? Like, are you going to be a CEO of a lean team, or are you trying to make this a huge team? Because that's going to make all of the difference in the world. And then the third thing I would say is assessing, and this is starting more with your team.
Mm-hmm.
I really feel like the systems would come a little bit later, but assessing, do I have the right people in place? And do they understand what they are supposed to be doing? So taking it internal first. What can I do? What are my boundaries? What feels like a non-negotiable for me? Where do I want to go with this business? Because some people may sit back and say, you know what? Actually, I'm super comfortable with the amount of clients that I have. This feels really good to me. I want to rock right here. I just need to fine tune some things. And that may stop some of the ruminating and the forward thinking and the moving and like locomotive that won't stop churning. And some people may say, no, I want to go full steam ahead. So then what do we do to keep the lights on and then make that happen? And then from there, making sure that your team feels like it serves you. There's so many
Mm.
times we hire just because we feel like we have to. And we need to delegate, but we don't hire well and we don't delegate well. And so you need to assess and make sure, do I have the right people around me? Because that's going to make all the difference, right? Like you don't roll with a network of people and a group of people who aren't ready to move forward. You may need to
Mm.
transition some team members. They may be the right person in the wrong seat, or they may be in the right seat. And it may be like you may need that seat, but you have the wrong person. And so assessing that and making sure you have a clear understanding of who am I working with and what am I using them for? How am I going to have them move the needle forward?
Yeah, it's so good. Such good questions to ask, and I love like the reflection that's possible there because I think that just like that awareness of like, okay, what do we really want here? Like even stopping to ask yourself like, what do I really want? Like am I just making decisions because I think it's the right next step or it's what somebody else told me to do or like, oh, I started this business so I have to go to the next level. What's the next level? I
Right.
did 500,000 so now I have to do 5 million. It's like, wait, hold up.
Exactly.
What do I want?
And the
What kind of
goalpost
life do I
keeps
want to live?
moving.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and we don't stop
Yeah.
to celebrate any of it. Like I already told Cameron, it's so funny because every time that I've sold a City Girls ticket, we like have a little family celebration. And I told them like after we sell out Sarasota, I was like, we're gonna celebrate. He's like, Mom, can we go to dinner? And I was like, sure. And so it's like I think bringing that almost that accountability to celebrate in with my children has been like because they something that we've normalized, right, as businesswomen of like, of course we're going to keep going, we're going to keep climbing, we're going to keep achieving is like the coolest thing. Like every ticket to them has been like, oh my gosh, another one, Mom, like to where it's like really seeing it through their
Oh,
eyes. So that's been something really, really cool that I've noticed. And like,
I
I
love that.
think that obviously both of us being moms of three, it's like our kids are teaching us stuff every single day too, for better or for worse.
All the thing, but they do. I love that idea because we don't, and as moms, we don't like take a beat to even think through, what we've done well and like how today has been successful. Um, and we keep moving the goalposts and we add more to our checklist and our to-do list. And I love that you incorporated your kids because these businesses do become like our babies. Like it's another part of our household. Like
Mhm.
it's not just a stream of income for us. It's like something we care about, we nurture, we take care of. as well, because we know it also takes care of and nurtures and takes, manages things from a
Yeah.
financial standpoint for our families. And so we have to do the same thing and celebrate along the way and give us that honor along the way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this has been amazing, Leah. Thank you so much for just sharing. You're such a wealth of knowledge. I feel like we could probably record like 5 episodes on just like people and communications and hiring. So we definitely need to do another episode. But I know that you have, first, I want you to tell people like where they can find you. And then can you tell us, you have an upcoming free class, I believe. So we would love to share the link with people if you can tell us more about that too.
Yes. So you can find me. I am on Instagram, LinkedIn. My Instagram is Leah F. Rosser. I do have an out of the box ops Instagram, but there's more fun happening on the Leah F. Rosser page for sure.
And cute
And
kids.
then the
So
website for the, yes, cute kids. Okay. My website is www.outoftheboxops.com. But I do have a free class coming up, and it's a mastermind all about calendars, calendar management, setting up the right calendar for you, figuring out the right system for you that makes sense for your calendar. And that will be March 18th at 11 a.m., Wednesday, March 18th at 11 a.m. And I would love to see all of you there to learn more about that, because I know that that's an area, especially as mom entrepreneurs, where we have to really fine tune and make sure our calendars are on point. So definitely, definitely would love to see all of you there.
yeah, I mean, time is our greatest asset. So I love that you're teaching that. That will be so valuable. So we're going to put all the links to everything that you just mentioned in the show notes so you can follow Leah, connect with her, hire her, go to her class. She's amazing. And one last thing for our listeners, if you have not heard already, which you probably have because I'm talking about it everywhere, we are hosting City Girls. Leah will actually be in Atlanta in October. So that one actually, I think is like,
Yes.
we have a lot of people at that one already. So we are hosting in, at the time that this is released, we will have already done Sarasota, but we still have Charlotte, we have New York City, we have Atlanta, and we have DFW. So 4 more cities to join us. And I'm obviously so
Yes.
excited just to see you finally, Leah, after like all of these years. So if
Yes.
you are a female founder who is growing this year and you want to grow alongside like-minded women, this is my private dinner series and business scaling workshop just for you. So we will drop the link for that below as well. So thank you again, Leah, for being here and for taking your time
Thank
out of your
you.
day to teach us and educate us and give us some good reminders of what's really important behind the scenes of our business.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me. It has been such a pleasure.
All right. We will see you soon.
Thank you.